I know we're all pretty used to this process now and being on Zoom and virtual meetings, but stay muted unless you're speaking, and then make sure to turn your mics on when you speak and speak clearly into the mics. We will be doing roll call for each of the votes because this is a virtual meeting and because we all love roll call votes, right? So that's going to be the first thing we start with is a roll call. Linda, will you help us out?
Good morning, board members. I will call your name. Just please let me know you are here. Grant Anderson.
Here.
Andrew Smith.
Here.
Rob Bohr. Greg Byers. Trevor Ebersol.
Here.
Bryce Christo.
Here.
Wolf Grote. Randy Harrell. David Janover. Scott Lowe.
Here.
Thank you. Adina Lund.
Here.
Thank you. Hal Marin. Jamie McCracken. Mark Melichenko. Sumit Mohan. Paul Mood.
Here.
Thank you. Tim Oliver.
Here.
Thank you. Ryan Peters.
Here.
Eduardo Rodales.
Here.
Thank you. Christopher Salas.
Here.
Thank you. Woodrow Scouten. Robert Yabes.
Here.
Thank you. Ed Stillings.
I'm here, sorry.
Thank you. Bob Thaxton. Kristen Teitler.
Here.
Thank you. Mike Weber.
Here.
Thank you. Troy White.
Here.
Thank you. Steve Wilcox.
I'm here.
Thank you. Herschel Workman. RJ Zetter.
I'm here.
Thank you. And Chair Panagua.
Yes, I'm here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Linda. Item 2 is our call to the audience. My understanding is that no comments were received in advance.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you. We'll move on to item 3, which is the Transportation Policy and Planning Director's Report. Tim Stroh is going to update us on what's going on. Tim?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Transportation Review Committee. It's nice to see everybody's faces. I hope everybody's doing well. I have a few announcements today. I would like to first start by welcoming a new member to the committee, Eduardo Rodales, Acting City Engineer representing the City of Maricopa. Welcome, Eduardo. I'd also like to congratulate Randy Harrell, Town Engineer from representing the town of Fountain Hills. He is not able to attend today's meeting, but he is retiring today. So I want to thank him for his service. If you know Randy, shoot him an email, congratulate him on his retirement. He's had a great career, and I really appreciate him participating on this committee. Next item is HERF and RARF collections continue to recover from the COVID closures earlier this year. RARF September collections came in approximately 8% higher than last September 2019. The same holds true for the HERF September collections. They were 5.4% higher than September of last year. So that's some positive news as we head into the fall. One note I wanted to bring up to the committee, as you're all very well aware, MAG is in the process of developing our next regional transportation plan. Audra will be providing a presentation later in the agenda. As we start to head into winter and spring of next year, the planning work for the development of the RTP will start to intensify. We'll have a lot of scenario planning, modeling to do. The modeling and planning teams will be stretched pretty thin during that time. The reason I bring this up is that both of those teams pride themselves on responding to MAG member agencies in a timely fashion. When you ask us to run model runs or other planning assignments, we want to respond to you in the fastest way possible. We really pride ourselves on that. So what I'm doing is I'm thanking you ahead of time for your patience and your support as this planning work intensifies over the next few months. Like I said, we'll still get to your request in a timely fashion. There's just gonna be a lot of moving pieces this next fall and spring. So thank you for your support as we continue to move forward with those items. A few additional items I want to bring to your attention. This last weekend, I had the opportunity to drive through the Happy Valley I-17 Divergent Diamond interchange. It is open. I know that ADOT still is in the process of opening all the additional lanes. They still have some work to do out there, but I believe this is the first full DDI in the state of Arizona. I know there's some partial DDIs on South Mountain Freeway. I could be wrong, but I believe that's what's going on. This is a great project. There's a lot of opportunities for bike and ped crossings in a safe manner, carries a lot of traffic, reduces congestion through that area. I live in this part of town, so I remember back when the roundabouts were in place. This is a significant step up. So great job to ADOT. And if you get a chance, go out there and drive through this TI on the weekend. Last reminder is that MAG is now accepting applications for federal fiscal year 2021 closeout funding. Patrick Stone, the Transportation Improvement Program Supervisor, sent out a memo. And in that memo, there was a link to a fact sheet on October 19th. He sent this out to this committee and all the other MAG modal committees, letting them know about this opportunity. Requests must be submitted on or before Friday, November 13th, 2020 at 5 p.m. This must be submitted via email. If you have any questions on this, please contact Patrick Stone after this meeting. You can contact him at his email, which is pstone@azmag.gov. Mr. Chair, that completes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you, Tim. A great update. Appreciate that. Does anyone have any questions for Tim on the items he gave us an update on? All right, seeing none, I'm going to move on to item 4, which is approval of the consent agenda. Items 4A through 4E on the agenda include the August 27th, 2020 meeting minutes. 4B is the Transportation Improvement Program project changes. 4C is the Avondale Goodyear UZA prioritized project listing. 4D, revisions to the arterial life cycle program policies and procedures. And 4E, safety performance targets for 2021. Are there any questions or would anybody like a presentation on any of these items? All right, I don't hear anyone clamoring for a presentation. Can I get a motion to approve consent items 4A through 4E?
Mr. Chairman, it's RJ Zeter. Move to approve.
Thank you, RJ.
Adina Lund, I second the motion.
Thank you, Dina. All right, we got a motion and a second. We do need to do a roll call. Linda?
Okay, here we go. Please indicate how you vote when I call your name. Grant Anderson,
Aye.
Andrew Smith,
Aye.
Greg Byers,
Aye.
Trevor Ebersol,
Aye.
Bryce Christo,
Aye.
Scott Lowe,
Aye.
Adina Lund,
Aye.
Mark Melichenko,
Aye.
Paul Mood,
Aye.
Timothy Oliver,
Aye.
Ryan Peters,
Yes.
Eduardo Rodales,
Aye.
Christopher Salas,
Aye.
Robert Yabes,
Aye.
Kristen Teitler,
Aye.
Michael Weber,
Aye.
Troy White,
Aye.
Steve Wilcox,
Yes.
RJ Zetter,
Aye.
and Chair Panaagua.
Aye. Thank you,
Is there
Linda.
is there anybody I did not call? The motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and then item 5 is ratification of the August 27th, 2020 agenda action items. So I guess this is one where we did a roll call and we had so much fun with it. We want to do another one, right? Is that right, Tim?
That is correct, Mr. Chair. Apologize. Mr. Chair, members of the Transportation Review Committee, agenda item 5 is a MAG housekeeping item. As you are aware, MAG posts our meetings online every month in numerous places on the MAG website, including the monthly calendar, TRC webpage, and under public notices. We were informed that for the August 27th, 2020 TRC meeting, that we did not post the meeting in a timely fashion on the MAG website under the Meetings and Agendas tab. Next slide, please. The August TRC meeting was posted in the other website locations all before the 24-hour deadline, but we missed one area. So out of the abundance of caution, MAG staff recommends the ratification of the following August 27th, 2020 agenda items. Consent item 3A, approval of the May 28th, 2020 meeting minutes. Consent item 3D, fiscal year 2021 MAG pedestrian bicycle facilities design assistance program and amendment to the fiscal year 2020-2021 MAG unified planning work program. Consent item 3E, transportation improvement program changes. Item 5, second project deferral request, City of Tempe Alameda Drive bicycle pedestrian improvement project, Rural Road to 48th Street. Mr. Chair, that completes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions. This item is for action.
Okay, thank you, Tim. All right, are there any questions for Tim before we entertain a motion? Okay, hearing none, can I get a motion to approve?
I so move.
Okay, did we catch who made the motion?
Mr. Chair, that's Grant Anderson.
Okay, all right. Can I get a second?
Robert Yabes, second.
Excellent, thank you. And here we go, Linda.
Here we go. Grant Anderson,
Aye.
Andrew Smith,
Aye.
Greg Byers,
Aye.
Trevor Ebersol,
Aye.
Bryce Christo,
Aye.
Scott Lowe,
Aye.
Adina Lund,
Aye.
Mark Melichenko,
Aye.
Paul Mood,
Aye.
Tim Oliver,
Aye.
Ryan Peters,
Aye.
Eduardo Rodales,
Aye.
Christopher Salas,
Aye.
Robert Yabes,
Aye.
Kristen Teitler,
Aye.
Mike Weber,
Aye.
Troy White,
Aye.
Steve Wilcox,
Yes.
RJ Zetter,
Aye.
and Chair Panaagua.
All right,
Motion passes.
all right, thank you, Linda. Thanks, everybody. That takes us to item 6, which is the mid-performance period target adjustment and will be presented by Ted Brown, MAG Transportation Performance Program Manager. Hand it off to you, Ted.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. Ted Brown, the Transportation Performance Program Manager. I'm here to talk today about some changes to our federal performance So MAP 21 in the FAST Act established a performance and outcome-based program for states and MPOs. These measures are intended to ensure transparency and accountability in decision-making as we make progress towards national goals. Performance measures generally fall into these 4 categories. Today, we are here to specifically talk about PM2, pavement and bridge condition performance, and PM3, system performance and CMAQ. Next slide. At the federal level, there's a clear and continued movement towards performance-based planning and programming. Our major planning documents must address these targets and how we will meet them. I also want to take a second just to talk about the nomenclature. The feds use the term target, so we also use the word target. But to be clear, these are really more projections. We're using historical data to project future performance. And finally, while there isn't a stick per se for missing your performance targets, that doesn't mean there won't be one in the future, and it's important to set realistic and data-driven targets. Next slide, please. So the simple graphic on the right kind of gives you an overview of the 4-year performance cycle. We originally set our targets in 2018. Here in 2020, we have the opportunity to revisit our 4-year targets and adjust them if necessary before the full performance period report is due in 2022. Next slide, please. So PM2 is pavement and bridge condition. It requires the establishment of performance measures for interstate and non-interstate NHS, regardless of roadway ownership. These targets were originally established by ADOT in 2018 and were previously supported by MAG's committees. On the screen, you can see the original 4-year targets for each measure. Next slide, please. So as we reach the mid-performance period, ADOT has examined their targets and they've elected to adjust 2 targets, the percent of interstate pavements in good condition on the interstate and the percent of non-interstate NHS pavement in good condition. They'll be adjusting these from 48 to 44% and 31 to 28% respectively. Naturally, you might wonder why these 2 are changing in particular. In discussing this with ADOT, there seems to be 3 main factors. One, the treatment types and preservation you do for good pavement is different from what you do on poor pavement, and we've previously been focused on poor pavement condition. Also in 2017, ADOT adopted a new pavement collection methodology. The new data points came in after the initial target setting, and there was frankly a difference. 2016 has far less miles and a different methodology. So when we created our slopes trend line with the older data, there was a difference. And finally, COVID-19 has short-term budget impacts, certainly, and I think kind of an unknown impact moving forward. So we want to make sure we have some cushion there. In our discussion with our partners over at ADOT, MAG staff does recommend that the agency continues to formally support these targets. Next slide, please. So PM3 targets are related to reliability and air quality. We're only going to talk about reliability today. As you can see on the slide, we have 5 targets here. The first 3 are agency specific. That is to say that MAG has set regional targets that differ from the statewide targets. The last 2 are unified targets where MAG has supported the state established targets. Next slide, please. So for this mid-performance period, we did do a thorough review of all of these performance targets, looked at our latest data sets, and determined that only one needs adjustment. That is the Truck Travel Time Reliability Index. We're on target to meet our other 4 in this reliability section. No great surprise in doing this review of the statewide targets. ADOT determined that their statewide target needs to be adjusted as well. We used the same data sets for analysis, so that was a very reassuring outcome. Just one sentence on truck travel time reliability. It's an index to measure how reliably a truck can traverse a roadway segment, and the higher the number means the less reliable. Next slide, please. Our methodology, as outlined by FHWA, we take a data-driven approach to target setting. We could look at where we've been, where we are now, and try to be cognizant of any external factors or future improvements that may impact our targets. We've tried to kind of visualize that with this chart on the slide. You know, we have an observed data line leading into potential futures where the dashed line represents an ongoing or continuing linear trend, and the other lines represent other potential outcomes. We refer to this as our cone of uncertainty, and our target needs to fall somewhere within that cone. Next slide, please. So on this slide, you see our projected trend line. Based on our observed data, we project to see decreasing truck reliability represented by an increase in the index. For context, I've provided our original projections and targets on the top right and our updated projections and revised targets on the bottom right. To put it very simply, we're recommending we increase our 4-year truck travel time reliability index target from 1.55 to 1.70. MAG has traditionally set conservative targets, and the added uncertainty about the impact of the pandemic on truck traffic is reflected in our proposed target. Our data sets thus far has shown that heavy traffic in particular never really dropped at any point during the pandemic, and in fact, the last couple months has been on the rise. That doesn't necessarily translate directly into decreased reliability, but it does add a bit of uncertainty to the proceedings. As I mentioned, ADOT is adjusting the statewide target as well by a similar amount. Next slide, please. So this item is on the agenda today for action. We recommend acceptance of the adjusted ADOT pavement condition targets for the interstate system and non-interstate NHS, and recommend approval of the adjusted MAG-specific truck travel time reliability index. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That completes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions.
Okay, thank you, Ted. Are there any questions about this presentation?
I have one.
Yes.
Grant Anderson.
Go ahead, Grant.
You're raising the reliability for the truck travel time. That lowers the reliability index. So what would happen if we left it at 1.62 and actually tried to get to what we thought would be a good number to start with?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Anderson, we feel there's still a lot of uncertainty surrounding how our data is going to kind of play out for the next couple of years. And as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, while there isn't a stick per se for missing the target, we do want to make sure that we are meeting our targets that we've set with FHWA.
What would we have to do to improve that to make sure that we met the 162 that we're currently not doing?
So, you know, these reliability metrics, especially this truck travel time reliability index, it's a complex measure, and there's a lot that goes into it. You know, some of the kind of confounding issues that go with this, you know, we have switched data providers. We started with here, and we have moved to INRIX, which is why you see a change in our projections. We had closures around the South Mountain interchanges was added to our decreased reliability for trucks. And frankly, there's a lot of uncertainty coming for what does traffic look like. So while we'd like to set a target that's realistic and achievable, we feel 162 might still be a little low, and we need to set a slightly higher target.
How often do we get to revisit this?
Every 2 years, sir.
No more questions.
Thank you, Grant. Any other questions?
Yeah, this is Ed Stillings with Federal Highways.
Okay.
Just wanted to kind of share. I'm currently the performance management person at FHWA locally that works with ADOT and also with the MPOs on their target setting. And so I reviewed the ADOT submittal and have seen their 3 new target proposals. I have one question for Ted. On the truck travel time reliability index, that is the one measure where ADOT actually, when they reported their 2-year observed numbers, they actually exceeded their target. So that was one area where they missed on. And so I don't think they had any choice but to revise it. But I was curious, did MAG also exceed the 1.55?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Stillings, we did not. Our initial target was 1.55, and we came in at 1.53.
Okay, so pretty close though.
Very close.
Thanks.
Okay, and any other questions? So one question I have, Ted, would just be on the pavement. Do we have any idea in terms of magnitude, how much more pavement's going to fall into that poor condition with this change?
Mr. Chair, member of TRC, I'd have to direct you to ADOT. We don't do those calculations. We are supporting ADOT's calculations. So I'd have to direct you to Mr. Anderson over at ADOT for more information on that.
Mr. Chairman, this is Greg Byers with ADOT.
Yeah, Greg.
So as of right now, we are at a little over 1% statewide on our interstate pavements, which is the one item that is regulated by federal highway. Their max target that's allowable is 5%. So we are well below any kind of adjustments that would possibly be made or implications from federal highway. So that's where we currently stand. As far as getting to that 5%, we're still quite a ways away and working hard to try and get there with the funding that we have.
Thank you, Greg. Yeah, I appreciate the fact that we're dealing with the reduced funds and a lot of uncertainty moving forward. Okay, so any other questions before we entertain a motion? Okay, do we have a motion?
RJ Theater, I move to approve.
Thanks, RJ.
Adina Lund, I second.
Thank you, Adina. Okay, all right, we'll do another roll call for this item. Linda?
Thank you, Chair. Grant Anderson?
No.
Pardon me?
No.
Thank you. Andrew Smith?
Aye.
Thank you. Greg Byers?
Aye.
Trevor Ebersol?
Aye.
Bryce Christo?
Aye.
Scott Lowe?
Aye.
Adina Lund?
Aye.
Mark Malachenko?
Aye.
Paul Mood?
Aye.
Tim Oliver?
Aye.
Ryan Peters?
Aye.
Eduardo Rosales?
Aye.
Christopher Salas?
Aye.
Robert Yabes?
Aye.
Kristen Teitler?
Aye.
Mike Weber?
Aye.
Troy White?
Aye.
Steve Wilcox?
Aye.
RJ Zetter?
Aye.
Chair Paniagua?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, we're moving on to item 7, which is the update on the development of a new regional transportation plan. And that's going to be presented today by Audra Kester-Thomas, MAG Transportation Planning Program Manager. Audra, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Chairman Paniagua, members of Transportation Review Committee. Pleased to be here with you this morning to give you an update on the latest of the development of the next regional transportation plan. And for those of us in Maricopa County, the extension of Proposition 400. And this is just to orient you to our performance-based evaluation process. As you all know, we're required by state and federal law to develop a performance-based regional transportation plan. Mr. Brown's presentation just preceding me plays into this. Those federal targets are required part of our regional transportation plan, and we have to demonstrate how our investment choices contribute towards the meeting of those federal targets. You'll see we've started with a large, robust needs catalog, and ultimately through next spring and summer, we'll arrive at a fiscally constrained regional transportation plan and investment strategy that is also a requirement of the feds. So I wanted to give you an update on 2 ongoing pieces of work that MAG has facilitated and completed, provide you that update and give you also an understanding of what our winter and spring look like. I first wanted to start with an update and presentation of a peer regional analysis that we had completed this summer. We initiated a peer region analysis in part to check in with our neighbors and friends, see if we could steal any of their good ideas, and ultimately do a gut check in terms of taking the opportunity really to make sure we have a visionary regional transportation plan. So we looked at best practices, looked at the composition of investments in our peer and competitive regions, looked at how and spent a lot of time looking at revenue funding. I think that is going to be a key takeaway. Hope that you take this information away from this presentation because it is really germane to some of the constraints that we have in its development moving forward. And then looked a little bit at development process. In fact, interviewed several of our peers to learn from maybe some of the mistakes that they had made, take some of their own wisdom. These are the peer regions we included in the analysis. The blue dots you'll see representing MPOs across the country. You will note that they're largely focused west of the Mississippi. This is largely a reflection of the fast-growing metropolitan regions similar to MAG. I also want to note that Valley Metro's peer transit authorities are circled in green. We included each one of those as well. There was a method to our madness. And as we move forward, our second part of today's presentation will focus and give an update on transit. It was really important for us to include a little deeper dive as it relates to transit funding in the portfolio of regional transit investments. So I think the big takeaway for us, the conclusion of this analysis is we're being outpaced in terms of revenue by peers. We were one of the first to establish a half-cent sales tax in the nation, and many followed us. But since, we have been surpassed. You'll see on the left, MAG is one of the lowest per capita revenue agencies that we evaluated. And to just demonstrate that a little further, you'll see a couple of our peer regions here indicated. So the half cent became kind of standard bearer in the 80s and 90s, but regions have added onto and further leveraged that mechanism. NCT COG, that's our North Dallas-Fort Worth area, North Texas area. You'll see they have 2 stacked half cents that combine to a full cent sales tax, in addition to a full cent for transit tax. In San Diego, they do have a half-cent sales tax. Our LA partners have 4 combined half-cent sales taxes that increase up to a 2% full tax, and then in Minneapolis, St. Paul, an underlying property tax. We have been tracking initiatives across the country. We are not the only ones looking to go back to our voters to extend or expand tax base. And so we've been tracking these initiatives over time. San Diego, or SANDAG, a couple of years ago looked to extend and expand their sales tax. It was unsuccessful. And so their state legislature gave their transit authority, MTS, the ability to go for their own tax. And this year we're planning on doing just that, establishing another half cent to enable their existing transit investments. This summer, in part informed with the oncoming pandemic, MTS has made the decision to postpone that November vote and reevaluate for next year. The discrepancy in investment really becomes measured when you now look at transit. Again, we have a half-cent sales tax. A third of it is dedicated to transit in this region. That equates to 0.17%. But when you look across to our peers, it is not. In fact, I would argue it is common to see a full cent dedicated at a regional level just for transit, and in some cases an even higher amount. I want to draw your attention to Campo. That's the Austin, Texas region. They, in fact, have an established 1 cent sales tax, but they are continuing to go to their voters this November for an additional property tax, an 8.75% tax that will further enable a light rail investment package as well as ongoing transit operations. So what are some conclusions and takeaways from this analysis? Bottom line, we're being outpaced by our peers in terms of transportation investment. There's a couple reasons for that. In part, state and federal resources are starting to diminish, and that rolls down to regions. Regions recognize how important transportation is to their economic portfolio and have continued to further invest in transportation for the prosperity of those regions. I will make one note that not only do we have a diminishing state revenue source here, HERF continues to bring in year over year less funding and hasn't been adjusted since 1991. We are one of the only states that also does not have a dedicated transit funding source to enable those sorts of investments. While the lottery funds certainly make some progress at a local level, there is no established statewide funding source for transit. We'll continue to see that pressure roll on to the regional level, not just here, but across the country. Operations and maintenance is a commonly funded regional investment. And other regions do more than just sales taxes or rely on federal formula funds and state funding. Many use public-private partnerships, maybe in the form of tolling or managed lanes, or even have capital investment packages where they work with developers to enable investments. I want to talk a little bit more today on our transit conversation. We believe this is going to be fundamental to our development of a regional transportation plan. It's important to remember that the original half-cent sales tax, Proposition 300, was to enable a freeway network and did so effectively. It was intended to be followed in the late 80s by a half-cent sales tax for transit. Some of you might recall and remember it termed as Valtrans. It ultimately failed at the ballot, and it was one of the reasons that Proposition 400's renewal in 2000s included a multimodal component, and for the first time, diversified funding to transit as well as arterials. I think one of the things that we like to impress upon our policymakers is we're continuing a continuation of a half-cent sales tax into the future will continue to further constrain us. We're trying to stretch it further and further and add more and more to it. And there's just a reality with that we're going to have to either set things aside or perhaps change our revenue portfolio moving forward. Transit, we believe, will be the biggest nut to crack from the RTP call for projects. The appetite and interest across the region for transit is enormous. And quite frankly, that's perhaps not a surprise. We continue to grow, be the fastest growing county in the country. And as we continue to densify, the multimodal investments that make a sophisticated metropolitan region move are needed in things like transit. So just as by way of reminder, Proposition 400 really was informed by the 2003 RTP. It is our policy documentation for the implementation of Proposition 400. As already noted, 33.5% of the sales tax is to transit, but in addition to the sales tax, MAG formula funds from the FTA, as well as some federal highway formula funds from CMAQ, are used to leverage transit investments in this region. The TLCP is managed by Valley Metro, our partners down the street. So when we endeavored in 2003 for transit investment, we took a plan-based approach. This is what was included in the 2003 plan. And what you'll see here was the intent to establish consistent bus service across the region. At the time, we had varying degrees of level of service, span, and the intent from policymakers was there should be a consistent level of bus service across the region. And so you'll see here that intent to create what we termed then a supergrid route. Very expansive, very extensive across the region. And the intent here was that regional funds would be provided to allow for that consistent level of service across the region. Then the Great Recession came, and the economic pinch was felt, of course, to this region. As you know, we're projecting that Proposition 400 funding will be about 40% less over the 20-year term, but it was felt particularly in the program. And that's because the transit program and bus operations in particular is driven by two funding sources, the regional sales tax and local funding. And in the Great Recession, that is what felt the biggest pinch. There was then a policy decision at Valley Metro to move away from a plan-based approach and instead go to a fixed revenue allocation model. Using estimates based in the early 2000s, a fixed allocation was then determined for each member agency in the TLCP, and that was the model moving forward. Some of you who are familiar with transit recognize this as jurisdictional equity, or JE. So I noted that there are two main funding sources to enable transit service in this region. And the primary one, quite frankly, is local funding. This is no surprise to those of you in this meeting. 7 of you are familiar with your own local sales taxes that have been established to enable transportation investments at a local level. It is fundamental, really, to delivering what we term as our regional transit network. In fact, this next graph shows approximately 70% of transit operations is funded at the local level. You'll note in this screen that green bar represents cities' local contributions to transit operations. I'll also note that includes that LTAF or lottery fund distribution as well. The dark blue represents federal funding coming in largely through a preventative maintenance formula. And then the lighter shade of blue represents that smaller regional component of enabling transit operations in the region. What does that look like? Probably this is a better depiction of that table that I've just shown you. This is 2019 bus service in the region, and what you'll see in the purple lines or routes are the routes that have are fully funded, I should say, through regional funds. You'll see blue lines, and that represents a mix of funding between regional resources as well as local funds. But by and large, you'll see that 70% represented in those green lines. Those are fully locally funded routes. In looking at the term of our extension, of Proposition 400, and in the last year of the Transit Lifecycle Program, we'll be spending approximately $104 million a year on regional supported bus service, and that's in 2020 dollars. That only represents the bus operations component, and that's about 20% of the half-cent sales tax. You'll see noted here that does not include the capital component of our bus program, such as bus replacements. So what's our path forward? I think we have 3 options. This is what we presented to policymakers this past month, and we'll continue to convey this as we move through this process. We could return to a long-range plan-based approach. It certainly would better articulate and map, if you will, what our vision is for regionally funded service. It comes with a host of constraints, not the least of which is it's hard to predict long-range bus service. For those of you who are familiar with transit, you know in this region, we make bus service changes every 6 months. Bus service is highly dynamic and extremely vulnerable to market changes, demand changes, population changes. And in fact, when you look at other RTPs, no one includes a long-range bus service plan because it is so nimble in terms of operations. We could continue with the current fixed allocation revenue approach. It's certainly consistent with established policy, but it has its own constraints. It doesn't enable and incentivize regional decisions, and it has its own equity matters as it applies to a large region. Or we can do what our peers do and what is basically industry standard across the nation, which is migrating to a more formula-based approach, using really performance as a guidance. And we've evaluated and looked at several models. I think there's been interest expressed from our policymakers to see what this could look like, perhaps alone, or even in combination with a couple of these other paths forward. I think we're not necessarily settled on anything yet, but we do need to make a change moving forward and make a deliberate decision about what the region's role is in bus operation assistance. So where are we at in this transit policy conversation? I will say we've just initiated it in so many ways. It is going to take many months to sort out. We presented this information, actually more depth information in October to our policy committees. We have been in partnership with Valley Metro on this endeavor, providing even a more detailed presentation and depicting well the call for project submissions at the October 19th RTAG meeting. We'll be presenting in joint session with Valley Metro again at the upcoming board meetings in November, and working with them to get detailed cost estimates for the service and capital that was submitted as part of the RTP call for projects. But if there's one thing I'd like to conclude or maybe summarize as part of today's presentation, it's these two fundamental questions that certainly from MAG's perspective, we think are fundamental moving forward, which are, what are the core elements of a regional transit system? And moreover, what is the region's role in funding that regional transit system? Just to summarize and conclude our presentation today, Mr. Chairman and members of the Transportation Review Committee, our November policy cycle will be presenting revenue projections to better understand what our forecast looks like for available revenue. This winter, we're going to buckle down and complete a lot of technical analysis, doing project level scoring, detailed program and project cost estimates, to set us up for some scenario planning. As Tim indicated at the beginning of the meeting, we'll have a lot of modeling work, in part to develop our new 2050 model network. And so we have a lot of work yet to do, and appreciate your cooperation and patience with us as we double down our efforts there. And of course, we have an ongoing commitment and engagement with the public. As you know, we launched our website and social media presence about 6 weeks ago and are thrilled with the footprint we've already made, engaging about 30% of people who haven't heard of MAG before. So we're engaging with new audiences. I believe we have about 500 comments already and feedback received through our website. And what I will say is it's very consistent with the research we conducted 1.5 years ago from values mapping. Shows the importance of doing statistically valid survey work and the value in carrying that information forward. Much consistency between what we're hearing today from what we heard 1.5 years ago, and that's the importance of regional investments, the choices that we provide in multimodal investments in this region, and really that people have a positive view of what we have done and hopefully what we'll do in the future. This will all set us up ultimately next spring to do scenarios and trade-off analysis. I'll be honest, the sobering news I want to deliver today is we have some tough choices ahead. We're projecting, $50 billion deficit between needed transportation investments and available revenue. And that means tough decisions. As we've told you before, status quo, just a continuation of a 0.5 cent, we'll probably only be able to fully deliver the original Proposition 400 plan. Not great news, but we're here to deliver the information that's important for our policymakers to use in making these decisions. And we'll be doing a lot of this technical analysis so that our policymakers has the best information available to enable the best decisions to be made. So, Mr. Chairman, members of TRC, that completes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Audra. Great presentation, a lot of information. Any questions?
Chairman, this is Scott Lowe.
Go ahead, Scott.
I might have missed it, but it seems like we don't have any idea of what the fare box revenues are.
Scott, members of TRC, Mr. Chairman, great question. Actually, we do and will include assumptions about fare box revenue moving forward. Actually, in looking back to Proposition 400, that's one of those lessons learned. We were a little aggressive in our fare box revenue projections, taking a approach to be a little bit more conservative in that. As we move forward into our scenarios, we will include those fare box revenue assumptions.
Okay. It's just, to me, it's important to, especially if you're talking about performance-based, part of the performance is ridership and what the right, obviously transit is not a moneymaker in the United States. but I think it would be important to know what the fare box percentages are, and even with our those neighbors and other regions that are that they're doing better than us, what are their fare box percentages compared to MAG?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, members of TRC, that is such a great point. And in part, one of the reasons why, we want to further pursue a performance-based approach and see what that might look like. Indeed, fare box recovery is an important part of any transit program. It is an important revenue source. And quite frankly, you get more revenue where you are serving demand. There's a more efficient transit service provided. But you have to balance that, right, between where performance and demand exists and the reach of the system that the region wants to deliver. And so that's a balancing act, and they're mutually exclusive sometimes. Nonetheless, we're committed to making sure we dial in our fare box revenue assumptions to make sure they are conservative and certainly reflect what we're seeing. I think that regions currently making some investments in a new fare box recovery system in hopes that that might improve our current fare box recovery. But nonetheless, point well taken, something we'll be endeavoring in the spring.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, this is Mark Melnichenko. I have a question.
Yes, Mark.
Audra, in the analysis, take for instance, the city of Scottsdale has a number of routes that we run and operate ourselves. And I think a lot of that is due to cost savings and effectiveness of the service and kind of tailored to our own community. Will that be part of any of the discussion and the scenarios? Because I think that could be important to a lot of cost savings within the region.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Milenchenko, thank you for the question. Honestly, that's a fundamental to, I think, the key questions that we see, which is what are the key elements of a regional transit system, and then what's the region's role in funding that regional system? I think one of the questions that, or perhaps discussions we've heard a lot of recently, is what should be eligible for bus operations funding. As you've seen in our presentation today, the 2003 RTP and the TLCP focuses regional bus operations support to regional investments. And those are that Supergrid, things that connect and across the region to ensure a consistent level of service. What I didn't show in today's presentation, but several of you are of course well aware of, is our express and commuter bus investments that we have also made. Again, regional in nature, moving people from origin to destinations that span multiple jurisdictions. We have heard a lot of interest in circulator service, localized investments that perhaps are more efficient in terms of cost, but that there's interest in the region funding those circulator or more localized transit services. Again, we're open to those conversations, but the reality is we have a very limited and scarce funding available, even if we were to increase over a ½ cent. And so those are the tough questions our policymakers will be faced with. From MAG's position, I think we're really focused on those regional investments and recognize the value those larger investments mean to a large region, one that is, we're the second largest region in the country. And so we have to span a lot of miles. And so we're at a ½ cent. I think, one of those things that I just want to continue to reiterate over and over again, it just doesn't go as far as it used to. And it's certainly not going to go as far as we want it to, especially given the amount of interest, diversity of transportation needs across this region.
Okay, thank you. And I have one last question. With the cost of a fixed system such as light rail, and I know that on-street bus rapid transit is a future mode that will be coming to the valley, and I think that it would be important for the region to see an implemented line to be able to really put their arms around it to move that ahead, because I think the on-street bus rapid transit could make those regional connections in a more cost-effective manner. But I think we will really need to see how that works on a specific line first before it moves ahead. That's just my viewpoint.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Milenchenko, couldn't agree more. In fact, that's why MAG has invested in the regional bus rapid transit study alongside and in partnership with the city of Phoenix, who continuing their efforts. We see a bright future for bus rapid transit in this region. Believe it should be in the mix for consideration as part of our high capacity transit portfolio, and indeed are waiting to advance those results as intended, ultimately to feed into the RTP process. We're confident that study will mature this winter and be right timed to be included in scenarios, because indeed we hope and see that as an opportunity that could really further our transit investment, a regional transit investment here.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Mr.
Any other
Chairman,
comments? Yes.
Robert Yabes. I have a question on the cost sharing for services that are running in your jurisdiction. Currently, right now, Phoenix and us have major investments on the operation of some of these routes. How is that going to play in the future? Are you going to be requiring some more local investments on the operations?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Yabes, great question, still unanswered. I think that's one of the key and fundamental takeaways we took. We have and documented that information in our transit funding paper that we distributed, I think, a month or so ago to our policymakers. As indicated in this presentation, we rely heavily on local communities for enabling a regional transit system, and indeed a city like Tempe with a dedicated sales tax to do just that. We do not have a required amount currently in terms of how much cities have to put in for transit, a match. We do not have an established policy as part of the TLCP or Proposition 400. It's on the table. But I think the one thing I would leave with you is if funding is held constant, if we don't make any changes in the mix or array or proportionality of Proposition 400 policy, the only way our transit network will grow or improve in quality is if local communities fund it. So that's just a sobering reality we're all faced with. And I think it further exacerbates how important this transit conversation is, because there is a pretty big gap between desired transit and available resources. And in fact, we've already heard from some of our managers who have indicated and admitted that if it's up to them locally to deliver transit, they won't have or be able to muster the support for it. So again, we have a long way to go to start answering some of these questions, but we're going to be deliberate about the decision-making process and make sure it's a transparent one.
Can I have a second question? May I?
Yes, please.
On your presentation, there was no mention of rail. I think the existing light rail is a good it's a good example of a regional system. Is that going to be funded? The operations of such rail projects the operations will it be funded as part of the extension?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Yabes, the question about whether or not light rail operations could be considered a regional investment, there's been an initial decision made on that. By way of just a bit of history, the decision as part of Proposition 400 was that the region would help on some of the capital elements associated with enabling a rail investment, regional rail investment here in this region. But it would be on the backs of our local communities to fund wholly the operations of that rail system. And Mr. Yabes, as you know, the city of Tempe, Phoenix, and Mesa now shoulder the full responsibility of the operations for light rail. As part of our ongoing conversations, light rail operations was thrown in as a potential program to have regional funding. At this point, the decision from our policymakers is a continuation of Proposition 400 era funding decisions, that light rail will not move forward, light rail operations, excuse me, will not move forward as a potential funded, regionally funded investment. that could change, but at this point, there seems to be consensus around continuation of Proposition 400 air policy as it relates to rail operations.
Thank you.
I will say, if I just take the moment to add on one really important key element moving forward as it relates to the rail program is transit asset management and state of good repair. The capital replacement costs associated with that trunk system are tremendous, and the region will be looking at that. That's still on the plate for consideration, and we believe, at least from our region at MAG's perspective, an important consideration and investment made by the region. Again, it's one of those federal targets for which we have to be responsive to.
Great questions. And any other comments? Any other questions? All right, this is a great discussion. Certainly a lot of work ahead, like you said, Audra. Some real difficult policy issues that need to be worked out. The local funding piece seems like that's an issue that can help. Not only with, like you said, kind of filling the gap from the funding, even if we go above a half cent, there's going to be some pretty limited funds there to be able to do what we need. So that's going to be an important piece. But also on the JE piece that you pointed out, it seems like that's going to be an important part to helping solve that issue as well, along with discussion about performance and that as well. So I'm glad you guys are looking at all that. This is some really good analysis that you've done. It's really helpful for us moving forward for this discussion. Audra, is there anything more that we can help with at this committee level that you would want us to do?
Thank you for the question, Chairman Pantiagua. I think just being astute to the challenges that we face as a region, not dissimilar perhaps from the challenges you face at a local level. And we're going to have to make some tough choices, no doubt. Even if there is a decision to augment our revenue portfolio, the reality is we're falling behind. And that is we're going to continue to play catch up. Especially as it relates to operations and maintenance of the roadway and freeway network. And so the realities, I like to say, my team likes to, maybe they don't like to hear me say this, but we're in the, manage expectations game. And I think it's important that we're conveying this technical information to our policymakers in a meaningful way so that they're best able to make some just really difficult decisions ahead. I think the point about local funding in transit is an important one. We will anticipate and continue to see a large need for local funding as part of a regional solution to transit, no doubt about it. And so I think that's an important takeaway from today's presentation as well. But just continue to appreciate your partnership and helping to translate some of these more complex technical matters that us engineers and planners know more astutely to our policymakers, whether our city managers or our mayors. Thank you.
Thanks, Audra. Okay, any other comments or questions before we move on from this item? Very important item, and lots more to come on it. So, all right, we'll move on then to, thank you, Audra, for all your help on that. We'll move on to item number 8. Are there any announcements by TRC members about your agencies?
Okay. This is Andy. Actually, Chairman, this is Andy Smith with Pinell County.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just wondering if I couldn't get some kind of update on. I would really like to see some kind of a framework. MAG used to do framework studies for transportation, and I certainly am we are in need greatly with over almost 400,000 trips a day between Pinell and Maricopa County. A way to figure out how all these people are going to get back and forth. They obviously don't know boundaries. The RTP is obviously based off of boundaries. we have ourselves a half-cent sales tax. We're talking about going out and getting another one, as well as we're in litigation right now, and we're hoping to have that figured out by February, March. But I would really like to, and I've reached out to Valley Metro and MAG, and it seems that their hands are tied because they can't really do any studying transportation-wise because it's not Prop 400. We're outside the 400 area. So I'm just kind of reaching out to see if there's some other way of getting federal dollars, state dollars to help us incorporate, because obviously our traffic is going to have impacts on what goes on in the MAG region within Maricopa County. And I'm just trying to grasp at some way of getting some kind of a framework study or some help out here.
I'd be happy to respond.
All right, thank you. So someone from MAG will be reaching out to you on that. Anything else, any other announcements for item 8? Okay, that takes us to item 9 then, request for any future items.
I have a request.
Yes,
the CARES Act, this is Grant Anderson, the CARES Act passed money for transportation as well as stimulus checks and other revenues. I don't think we've heard anything about where the transportation money for the CARES Act went to and what's being done with it. I think we need an update on that.
Mr. Chair, members of TRC, John Bowen presented this item when this first came out, if you recall. We can circle back with you, Grant, if you'd like, and give you an update.
I think that'd be great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Great. Thank you, Tim. Any other future item requests? All right, well, that takes us to the end of our meeting then. I really appreciate everyone on the meeting and all the great presentations today. Thank you so much. Our next meeting is scheduled for Thursday, December 10th at 10 a.m. And so with no further business on our agenda today, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.